you all for coming out tonight. My name's Jan Rather. I'm the Infrastructure Engagement Specialist in the Mayor's Office. I work very closely with DOMI. Again, thank you from the Mayor's Office and DOMI to OPDC for hosting us here and setting up the watch party at Fraser Fieldhouse as well. We're here to talk about Charles Anderson Memorial Bridge pre-construction. So just some updates about what's going to be coming down the line the next couple of years. Before we get started, real quick acknowledgement to Councilman Charland, who's joined us. I don't see any of the other council people, but if they walk in, we'll acknowledge them as well. We'll just do a quick round of introductions. I already introduced myself. I'm joined by Zach Workman, who's going to do a lot of the presentation. The city's chief engineer, Eric Setzler, who's here in the front. Laura Tsutsui is moderating our Zoom and our chat. And then Lindsay Robles, who welcomed most of you, is the neighborhood engagement coordinator for Oakland. She will hopefully be getting people who might have missed the sign-in sheet to sign in. We just want to get people connected with the project via engage.PGH as well. So real quick, the purpose of the meeting today is to summarize the rehabilitation project and provide information on the construction impacts and the schedule of the project.
Thank you all so much for coming out. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Zach Workman. I'm a senior project manager with the City of Pittsburgh in the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, or DOMI. I've been with the city since 2019, and I've been working on this project since 2019. I think, I'm sure a lot of people in the room and online have a kind of intimate relationship with the bridge or the crossing or the neighborhoods that it impacts for way longer than that. But so I came into this in 2019. We were kicking off a bridge rehabilitation project, the first step of which was based on the historic nature of the structure to carry through what's called a historic bridge rehab analysis. This is a lengthy process in which engineering teams evaluate the use of the structure today, the use of the structure historically, what people would like to get out of the structure tomorrow after a project is completed, and evaluating, can we get there feasibly and prudently by rehabilitating the bridge, or do we need to investigate an all-new structure? Through that, we learned that it is prudent and feasible to rehabilitate the bridge. A little bit of background, some of the elements that make this such a historic structure was designed by a local engineer named E.M. Weichert. He had a novel way of distributing forces through the steel truss, as you can see in the middle photo. And it was used on several bridges throughout the region. I think maybe the highest profile is the Homestead Grays Bridge. But for reasons like that, we investigated how to make the most out of this historic bridge and preserve the features that make it unique. One other thing that, we're primarily here talking about the Charles Anderson Bridge, but it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that there's a second bridge just upstream in Schenley Park, the little Panther Hollow overpass. That structure is also going to see serious reconstruction effort over the next couple of years. So we wanted to start out by just circling back on some aspects of the project timeline. Like I said, the original project started up in 2019. I think it's been on the city's mind for much longer than that. But the actual design and engineering project started then. I think as the details on the rehabilitation project were starting to come together, the anticipated start of construction was not going to be until 2026. In 2022, the city started taking a much closer look at some of these outstanding older bridges, and through some close analysis, inspectors notified us that we needed to close the bridge in February of 2023. That came as a surprise to a lot of people, and we know it's been a huge inconvenience to the neighborhoods and to commuters in the region. The bridge sees, there was approximately 21,000 vehicles per day crossing the bridge. So after the closure, the first thing we did was evaluate what are the options to get this reopened to traffic, and how do we do that both with using taxpayer dollars most effectively and also minimizing the amount of disruption. So that's, 15 months ago since we first closed. I think probably to an outsider's perspective, it might not feel like there's been a lot of progress in getting the bridge reopened. Part of why we're here tonight is to show just the enormous amount of effort that has gone into getting this project off the ground, accelerating the design effort, getting into construction, and securing funding for construction. So shortly after the closure, the city worked closely with PennDOT and with the design team, evaluating our options for how to move forward. And Mayor Gainey made his way to Harrisburg and petitioned to get this project as a high priority as possible. Fortunately, the way that's played out is this project is 100% federally funded. A majority of that is through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So it's great that while we've had to wait to get into construction, we're getting a full, comprehensive, rehabilitated structure, and that's 100% federally funded. So couldn't have worked out better for the city. Also, I'd like to emphasize that as we were entering into kind of the midway point in our design process, we still had about 2 years worth of design to go. And our design team burnt the midnight oil, and they completed the design in just under 6 months. We're extremely appreciative for their effort. Just a quick background. So as I've said a few times now, the project started in 2019. So we did have some outreach in 2019, stakeholders, residents, and consulting party meetings to discuss some of the historic elements of the bridge. We've come to you guys with some of the elements, some of the findings from preliminary engineering, and presented some of the findings from our final design. I'm going to go back through some of that today. And where we are today, pre-construction public meeting. So again, thank you for your continued interest in this project. So just a quick overview of the kind of big picture items, obviously focusing around the Charles Anderson Bridge, but that's not all that's happening here. The full deck, the full driving surface and sidewalks of the bridge will be completely removed, replaced. The ornamental historic railings will be taken off-site and refurbished and reinstalled. The entire truss, that's the bulk of the structure you see, will be both repaired and strengthened and then fully repainted. The concrete substructure, several piers and abutments, that will be, again, repaired. And the project continues, like I said, to the east, where we're rebuilding the overpass on Panther Hollow Road. And we are incorporating a cycle track that will extend from Dawson Street to the tie-in in front of Phipps. And with that is going to be a new upgrades to the signalized intersection at Dawson Street. And the way that that's going to be accomplished, you know, as the bridge looks today, we have 2 lanes eastbound, 2 lanes westbound. Based on traffic analysis, the westbound traffic volumes did not warrant 2 dedicated lanes of traffic. So that will be replaced with the cycle track that will extend deeper into Schenley Park in the years to come. So getting into some construction elements, talking about the detours, the vehicle detour is going to largely remain the same as it has since the closure last year. So if you were west heading east, you'd be using Bates Street, 2nd Avenue, Greenfield Avenue, Ronald Street onto the Greenfield Bridge to Greenfield Road. The pedestrian detour, as I mentioned, the bridge will be getting an entirely new deck, and because of the way the deck will be installed, as well as the steel support system, as well as some of the repairs and strengthening of the truss itself, the entire deck and both sidewalks will be taken off of the structure. So we can't provide pedestrian access over the bridge once the project gets moving in earnest. We know it's been a pretty relaxing entry point into the park over the last year. Unfortunately, the reality is we'll have to deal with the alternative closest path, which takes you on routes up into Pitt's campus. So if you were starting from the west and heading east, you'd be using Dawson Street, Bouquet, Robert Clemente, Schenley Drive, over to Panther Hollow Road. While that is especially inconvenient, we would like to emphasize that the trail beneath the bridge, the Panther Hollow Trail or the Junction Hollow Trail, that will remain open. There will be occasional stoppages while the contractor is moving equipment or working directly overhead, but it will remain open through the construction of the bridge. There is also the bridle trail, which is kind of squeezed under the east abutment of the bridge. That will see occasional detours, but that's just a pretty quick shortcut over to the underpass that connects to the Schenley Park pool. Worth mentioning that amenities in Schenley Park, while they are maybe less convenient to access, will not be directly impacted by construction. So both the pool and the playground will not be impacted directly by construction. So where do we stand today? Well, we've got about 2.5 years of construction ahead of us. The contractor and subcontractors have been working on submittals and designs and permits, getting steel fabricated off-site, working on their means and methods for some of the early repairs as well as what comes next, preparing equipment. At the moment, Mercedes, who's the prime contractor, anticipates beginning to develop on-site access in August. That'll be largely beneath the bridge and not too noticeable or impactful for the traveling public. Although, as we, again, move into the actual bridge repair process, we have to plan, we have to prepare for closing the deck to all pedestrians, and at the moment that's anticipated for after the Labor Day holiday. So construction will continue into 2025, into 2026, and we have a milestone date to open up to vehicle traffic by Thanksgiving of 2026. So this is a quick summary of some of the big items to expect, and might be a little hard to read. I won't go into too much detail right now, but it kind of reiterates what I described as the overall work plan, when different steel elements get repaired, when the deck will be removed and reinstalled, when some of the signal work will happen. And just wanted to reiterate that it takes a city to do these kinds of projects. There's an enormous amount of support within the city itself, across the departments, as well as at the state level. This project really became everybody's focus in 2023, and I think that there is an enormous amount of effort put in to getting that design package out the door. So really thank the design team for the effort that they put in. It's a lot of sleepless nights. And just like to point out that our construction team, we've got about 20 different folks here who are going to make this project a reality. So with that, we're going to open it up to questions. I just wanted to say thank you again for your patience as we get started and for coming out tonight.
So I'll kind of moderate questions. The way that we've done this, I don't know how many people we've got on Zoom, but a number of people there. So we'll just kind of alternate questions between in the room and Zoom, unless there stop being questions on Zoom or the room, and we'll just stick with that. So you got a question here?
Yeah, just two quick questions relating to sort of schedule and process. After 219, when did we actually secure 100% funding through the infrastructure bill? And was, as part of the bidding process, expedited schedule considered as part of the bid?
As far as when the funding source, so initially we were typically our bridge projects at the city, 5% of the city, the city pitches in 5%, the state pitches in 15%, and then federal government pitches in 80%. So that was our assumption when the project first went into fast track. As far as when it changed to 100% federal, I believe that was late 2023.
May of last year or so, as we were going through trying to figure out how to.
It was more recent than that, though. We had to redo the RA.
Yeah, I think the conversations happened in the late spring of last year. As we were trying to figure out how to expedite this process, making the decision: do we repair the bridge, try to reopen it, and let the project go on its pace? And then we decided it'd be better to just advance the project and get it going. And I think we had to do legwork to get that money, but I think that was about through last year that conversation was happening. The question about accelerating the schedule. Yeah, which.
So with regards to, and you're asking about accelerating the construction schedule.
If we had 100% federal funding as part of the bidding process, did we actually consider expedited schedule?
Because of, in a way, because of the type of bridge that it is. So one thing that we were debating earlier on was, is there going to be a way to maintain pedestrians during construction or maintain vehicles during construction? And that would have greatly lengthened the process. So one thing that we realized is that in order to get this done quickly, we do have to close the bridge completely. But because of the nature of the type of bridge it is, this is the fast track. Maybe you, Eric, you would say that you can get through these truss rehab projects quicker, but I'm guessing that just because of the enormous amount of steel repairs, steel strengthening, and the fact that we are replacing the entire floor beam and stringer system beneath the deck, that this is, at best case, a two-season project, and at worst case, 4 if you're staging. So.
Do we have a question on Zoom?
The first 2 questions are about pedestrian access. When is pedestrian and bike access to the bridge expected to be closed for construction?
Eric, did I have that correct earlier, that it's Labor Day is? Okay, so the expectation is that things will remain open to pedestrians and to bicyclists up through the Labor Day holiday.
Of what year?
This year. And was there a second question?
It was the same.
Okay.
Question here.
I don't need this.
It's
I
for the
have
people on Zoom.
Really loud voice. Related to the immediately previous questions about access, there are a lot of people that go to CMU from this side of the bridge, and when the bridge is definitely closed for pedestrian traffic, I think you kindly showed that we should go down the street and use the other bridge to cross by Schenley Plaza. That's certainly possible, but it seems to me that one thing that was overlooked in the process of design is some permanent connection with the valley between the sidewalks of the boulevard of the Allies. So traditional Pittsburgh concrete stair going down, that would be probably entirely out of the question for the state to finance, but perhaps the city could find a way to finance it. There was a wooden bridge there originally and a wooden stair down. The stair now is completely dilapidated. So perhaps during the construction, when the bridge is closed, there could be a 2-step addition. One would be to build a wooden stair down, let's say in Oakland Square, going straight down to the pond, and then taking the steps that exist on the other side. Thank you for your patience.
Did everybody hear the question? Okay.
I will say that we do have some projects, some STEPS projects at the city level that we're working with the state to advance. So they are on board for rebuilding some of the city's staircases. But I will say that a lot of stairs, I mean, we've got 700 or 800 sets of stairs around the city, and they were built in with a different level of appreciation for the topography. They just kind of put them where they wanted, not necessarily where they fit. And so I know that the hillside along, sorry, what's that street there? Parkview. It's steep grades, and there's been some past stability issues. And so building new stairs, it's essentially a small bridge in itself, and these projects have become much more elaborate as the understanding of how to make them permanent, how to build them to last. But I understand the frustration that there's not a temporary route during construction.
Is there a question on Zoom?
Someone on Zoom asked, what will the work hours be for the bridge? Will they be working overnight?
Work hours will be, I believe, I'll defer to our construction project manager.
Yeah, this is Eric Bertrand with Masitis. So when we're working on the project, we typically will work 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Usually starting around 7 o'clock till 5. Very little, if any, night work is expected on this job. In the winter time, when the clock changes and it gets lighter, a little later, we'll usually go to later in the morning and goes dark a little earlier. We'll usually go to 5 8-hour days, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30, but not much night work, if any, is expected.
Thank you. In 1988, they did a major rebuilding of the bridge where they replaced all the bad steel that was identified at that time as bad. They replaced the entire deck. They replaced the sidewalks, the parapets, and all the bad concrete in the abutments. And during that entire project, they kept one sidewalk open. They kept it open on one side for half the project and the other side for the other half of the project. I don't see anything peculiar to this bridge that wouldn't allow you to do it again, because the sidewalks cantilever off the sides of the bridge. They're not part of the main structure. And the floor beams all run parallel to the travel direction of the bridge. So you could take all of those off without affecting the sidewalks. So I don't understand why a sidewalk can't be kept open to allow pedestrian access during the course of the project, including fixing the railings, because those can be repaired or rebuilt in stages.
So the rehab project in the 80s did, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, they did reuse the floor beam system and the stringers? They reused everything. I guess even the buckle plates were, yeah. So at that time, they were essentially pouring new concrete on top of the original kind of design. That there was some poor details in how that was built that allowed for water to intrude into the deck, and the deck was never really properly reinforced for the type of I think for the type of abuse that it gets. So with what we're doing now, they are removing the entirety of the steel support system. And one of the improvements there is that there will be no joints anywhere on running longitudinal on the bridge deck. So I don't know if you remember, in 2019, there were some really deep cracks running longitudinally along the bridge with like practically trees growing out of it. That kind of thing should not happen in the future of this bridge. But because we're going the extra mile on the repairs, it's also that much harder. There wasn't a way to keep a sidewalk out there because none of the steel will be there this time.
Question on Zoom.
Will there be cranes situated on the Oakland side of the bridge, or generators, et cetera?
Pass this one back to Eric.
Is that the Parkview side?
Yeah.
Yeah, there at times there will be, as part of this floor system removal and replacement, a crane will basically work its way from the middle of the bridge systematically out towards the Oakland side and also from the middle towards the Schenley Park side. So at some point when we reach the abutment right by Parkview and we're replacing steel there, there will be a relatively small crane, nothing really big, but a small crane that's set up there near Parkview for a number of weeks. There'll be smaller cranes when we're doing some of the abutment work, but nothing of any size. All these cranes will be mobile cranes that, can be moved around.
Nothing like was used on Junction Hollow for lifting those beams.
No. These will be 50 to 75 ton cranes, which are, in the grand scheme of things, fairly small.
It won't alter traffic on Parkview.
No, it won't. That will not.
There's a question back here. Just give me a second.
Actually, I have two questions. One might be more of a statement. The first is, my house, the back of my house overlooks the bridge. I don't know about your traffic study, but in the mornings, that bridge has traffic all the way into the park. So it's not, that you're saying that there's less traffic, so you're cutting down to one lane. Now it's going to go way into the park. That's the one thing. And the next one was, you said that one of the routes was, once you close the bridge, one of the detours is going to be through Pitt's campus. Is Pitt going to stop closing the streets in its campus? Because we are being penned in. Oakland, it's impossible to leave. And once you close other streets, like what is it, Roberto Clemente Drive, and they're getting deliveries, and then there are things closed all over the place. You got to help us. You can't just close the bridge, which I know that's an important thing, because we could be killed, but then we can't get out through Oakland, and then you're pushing everything on Swinburne, and that's not a road that can handle all that traffic. So are you talking to Pitt, or are they going to screw us too?
Laura's gesturing at me.
To add on to that, Elena on Zoom just also asked, can the city appoint someone to coordinate these efforts of closing streets and constructions and all this kind of stuff?
So yeah, a lot of this is, I'll let Zach maybe add on to this, but my role as the infrastructure engagement specialist is to try and do the best I can to coordinate this stuff. So we are trying to improve our communication about closures in Oakland in particular. I know that it's been a challenge. We aren't there yet, but we are trying to, I'm trying to reach out more often to our special events committee, make sure that the permits that they're approving are acknowledging the closure on the Charles Anderson Bridge. Obviously, they've been considering the closure to vehicle traffic, but you do raise a good point about closures to pedestrian traffic, making sure that that pedestrian detour stays open. So it's something that we can continue to be in communication about, make sure that our special events committee knows that that's, a dedicated pedestrian detour. And yeah. I was talking about the cars. Okay. Yeah, and maybe Zach, I don't know if you want to talk about the traffic part of the question, which is reducing it to one lane. But yes, we are trying to work closer with Pitt and other entities that are closing streets in Oakland.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the detour, the vehicle detour that's posted is Bates down to 2nd Avenue. If you're in a vehicle, you're free to use whatever route is most convenient or least congested. But we're not specifically routing.
Have you ever gone up and down Bay Street?
Only on a bike.
From 7 in the morning to 7 at night?
Only on a bike.
Bates to 2nd to where?
I'd have to jump
And
back.
then Greenfield to the Greenfield Bridge?
Correct. Correct. Which, I mean, this is the reality. Bridges connect communities, and when a bridge is inaccessible, you realize that what you were taking for granted. I'm not saying anyone in here was taking it for granted, but we've got a lot of bridges across the city, and we're working to do these kinds of projects on dozens of bridges in the next 5 years. And this is a conversation we're having in communities across the city. So, it's going to be frustrating. I understand that, and it's already been frustrating. But I feel pretty good about that at the end of the day, we're going to have a much better product than what we had after the last rehabilitation in the 80s even.
Are the traffic studies going to be ongoing so that as you do additional road closures both in and out of Oakland, you'll be able to continue to have traffic flow going across to where we need to go, especially during rush hour traffic? It's going to take a fair amount of coordination. In 2.5 years, there's going to be a lot of other road closures and a lot of other construction. So who's coordinating that effort?
So I will say that I am a structural engineer. I work 95% of the time on the city's bridges. The DOMI does have a traffic department, and I will bring this feedback back to them. And I know that, Oakland, downtown Oakland, the routes along the BRT, there are some real challenging neighborhoods to work in. I don't think anyone can deny that, but I'll make sure that I get this feedback back to them. Where's Zoom? Yep.
I'll be like back to school. I have one question, but 72 parts. I have 3 questions. First of all is historic status. When do you make a determination of putting, I'm going to say, good money after bad money and trying to keep a historic structure versus level it and start anew? So where's that break point? Because we know that you can build a bridge in less than a year. It's been solved. So again, the folks here, for 15 months, they've already been displaced with this bridge. Again, now we got another 2.5 years on top of this. So we're talking almost 4 years when something else took a year. So the historic status, and where does that play in? The second part of this is a July 10th, 2026 date for 26 days, I believe the contractor has, to demolish the Commercial Street Bridge and slide a new one in place. So now we have 2 different East End bridges out at the same time. The gentleman asked about an accelerated construction process. Again, is there any way to accelerate the accelerated construction project to complete this before that July 10th, 2026 deadline, not after Thanksgiving of 2026? And let me think, I go to my third one here. The lane. The left-hand outbound lane on the bridge, you have it as 10.6 versus the right-hand lane being 11 foot. The inbound lane is 11 foot. Is there any reason why you're squeezing that 6 inches out of that, making all 3 lanes 11 inches? By looking at your picture you had there, I don't know where the extra 6 inches went, because on the other side of the bridge, if you take the center line, I add up, I think the 9, the 2, and the whatever. I did the math there. We're missing 6 inches someplace. So the 9, the 2, and the 11, that's 22, and we got 11 and 10.6. We're missing 6 inches someplace, if that was truly down the center line. Knowing that if you're showing Port Authority buses, their mirror-to-mirror length is about 120 inches. Our vehicles got 120 inches from mirror to mirror, so when people are crossing, in a 10-foot 6 lane, I got 3 inches on either side before we're touching mirrors.
I think I might start with that third one. I might defer to you on the first one. So as far as the lane configuration, as mentioned, we are getting as much out of the historic bridge as possible. The deck will be widened. I don't know if anyone can shout it.
Roughly 2 feet, well, the curb to curb, where the driving surface is roughly 2 feet wider than it is currently today.
Mm-hmm. So
you're getting more width out of it.
So the new bridge is about 2 feet wider than it is today. But space is tight, and because of that, the lanes out there today are 10.5 feet each. So we are effectively improving on the lane clearance from today. And when we're working on routes that have heavy vehicles, buses, emergency vehicles, we see that 11 feet is kind of a tolerable lane width to work with. So the 10'6" interior lane is partially just based on the fact that you're not up against the Jersey barriers or anything like that. So the second question you asked was about the schedule of the two projects. That is a reality that the Commercial Street Viaduct will be closed in 2026. That is something that we had talked a little bit about late in the design project. If our contractor can get it open by July 26, no pressure, no pressure. Yeah. But I will say that you mentioned how the Parkway Bridge is going to be built off alignment and slid into place, and that kind of technique wasn't really feasible here. For one, just how dense the neighborhood is around it, and yeah. And for the first question, I'm going to defer to our chief engineer, who's got more experience on the rehab analysis.
Yeah, so as Zach mentioned, there is a pretty extensive process early in preliminary engineering for these historic bridges. This bridge was already determined to be historic before we started the project, so we knew we had to look at this. We have to develop what's called a purpose and need and clearly lay out what our goals are of the project, because you need to have clear goals in order to evaluate the bridge. Then our design team was charged with doing a detailed inspection, doing a detailed analysis to see what it would take to rehab the bridge. We're doing a lot of strengthening, a lot of repairs, a lot of strengthening to the truss to handle it. That is one reason why, for example, we wanted the 11-foot lanes for the buses and bigger vehicles, but we actually went with 10'6" in the middle. We're literally squeezing every inch out of this that we can get to meet the load carrying capacity. There's not, in the historic process, there's not an exact, if this is your cost or this is your cost-benefit ratio, there's not an exact dividing line. Is it prudent, is it not prudent? But there's a process, there's input from various historic stakeholders. The cost is part of it, but it's not the only consideration. And through all that, looking at all those different pieces, the determination that was come to, which the State Historic Preservation Office agreed with, was that it was prudent and feasible to rehab the bridge. And so then we have to do that because it's a historic bridge. Rehabbing a truss bridge is a very complicated process. There's a lot to do. That has to do with the long time frame. Fern Hollow was an amazing project, and it was a great success. I'm proud of it. I know PennDOT's proud of it. I know the community's proud of it. It showed what we can all do when we kind of get together and make something happen. But it also, it sets an unrealistic bar for other projects. I mean, literally everybody at PennDOT, everybody at the city, the contractors, the suppliers, everybody made it their absolute #1 project. We had weekly meetings with 30 people from PennDOT on the call, including the district executive and, a bunch of people from the city and the entire design team, which was wonderful. But it just can't happen for every project, because if every project gets that attention, then no project gets that attention, right? So it was a great success, but it definitely set a bar that really can't be achieved on a regular project. The construction methods for that project were purposely chosen to be very simple and straightforward for construction. It's a precast concrete multi-beam bridge. I'm sure people saw they brought the beams in, set them down, you put some pans on it, you pour concrete, you move ahead. And just with the rehab of this truss, it can't go that fast. Even one of the things that's complicated, it's going to seem like it's getting off to a slow start when we actually do get out there. Because we closed the bridge because it didn't have capacity, Mercedes actually has to fix several of the truss gusset plates from below before they can even get equipment on the bridge to start doing that work. So some of those things do make it take longer. So, you know, it's a little unfortunate that it does take that long, but really that's what it takes. And, you know, I will just reiterate that, you know, I've had some conversations with PennDOT's project manager for the Commercial Street Bridge. You know, at the point when we were putting this out to bid, there's still some uncertainty. I know that is their schedule. They're working towards it. I think we're going to have to pay close attention as we get closer to 2026. A lot of things can change on both projects, to be quite honest, and particularly, like, that project's very complicated as well. So we'll keep an eye on it. We know that it's a big impact, so we'll see how it goes.
Got questions on Zoom?
Yeah. Where will the construction vehicles and workers and such be parking?
Do you have enough space in the construction limits? Yeah, that's a good question. I think we've seen that submitted on the Engage page as well. There's enough space within the work site itself that vehicles and that kind of thing will be parked basically, you know, not on local roads, which I think is the main concern.
I would say, for the most part, on the Schenley Park side where the road is closed currently.
Okay, for those on Zoom, there might be some spillover into Schenley Park, but again, there's a fair bit of road there that's closed to vehicles currently, so that gives the contractor room for equipment. Can I take the question? Sorry.
The clover leaf in the park, crossing over to Phipps, is that going to be done at the same time as the Anderson Bridge, or wait till the bridge is over and then do it?
Yeah, so the second bridge in this project, you know, weeks, months before the main bridge closed, we were discussing the future of that structure, how much life was left in it, whether or not we needed to start programming you know, major repairs or kind of spot repairs. And once the Charles Anderson Bridge closed, you know, everything kind of went into hyperdrive. And we also said, hey, by the way, we have the second bridge here. Can we include this in the project? And fortunately, the answer was yes. So the entirety of that construction work will happen during the Charles Anderson Bridge project. I think the majority of the work is scheduled for 2025. So,
I'm asking about the other side of the, up by Phipps?
Yeah.
Or this bridge here?
No, the one by Phipps. But that will also make it another big traffic problem, because people coming from Squirrel Hill would be turning right and going past Phipps to get into Oakland, and now they won't be able to do that.
There will be, this bridge will see closures during 2025, but the plan is that vehicles can detour within the cloverleaf. So there should be no major disruption to the flow of traffic as it is today.
Linda on Zoom wants to know, or wants an update on the condition of the Swinburne Bridge, because it's seen a lot of use since the closure of the Anderson Bridge.
The Swinburne Bridge is, you know, we still have a project in motion to replace that structure. There was concerns earlier on about the timing of these projects. That one will not go to construction before Charles Anderson reopens to vehicles. That bridge, we keep a close eye on it. We're inspecting it every 6 months. We've done a number of repairs in the last couple of years. So at this time, you know, we're still advancing through the design work for a replacement structure. But that won't happen until after Charles Anderson reopens.
So westbound across the bridge at the Parkview entrance. Right now, it's 2 lanes, and you can sit in the left-hand lane to try to cross traffic, especially at rush hour coming back. Do we hope to have a holding lane there, or a spot there, or a light to allow traffic to cross the double lanes as they're coming up? And then can you also fix the do not turn on red at Dawson to be a morning thing versus an afternoon?
It's reversed right now. So you can turn after 4, which is at rush hour, which should really be flipped. When you're coming from Dawson, taking a right onto the bridge, it says no turn on red up to 4.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
That's all.
We can connect with the traffic team on that. I'll hand you my card, or let's talk after this, and it'll be easier if we can just like write it out and talk about it. Question on Zoom.
Joanne on Zoom wants to know, so she says, Dawson Street's barely 2 lanes and trucks of all types impede traffic flow even more. Is it realistic to temporarily ban parking on one side of the street for the duration of the project?
I, again, don't know that Zach will know the answer to that, but we will, yeah, we'll talk to the traffic group and get an answer. This meeting's being recorded, and we can get the transcript. If you want to put your contact information in the chat, we can connect about that. Any questions in the room?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Patrick Hassett. I've got a number of questions, but I'll just go through them one at a time, depending upon everyone else's interest. First, what's the service life of this bridge? How long, the rehab? In other words, how long is this bridge intended to last?
50 years for this current
For the,
rehabilitation.
right, as opposed to a new bridge. I was just curious as to what that was. Is there any incentive in the contract for early completion?
There is disincentive for a
Late completion, okay.
Just so the people on Zoom, because they need the mic to hear. So if you want to ask the questions, then we'll answer them instead of having to pass it back a bunch of times.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So your answer was, yeah, there's disincentives.
Yes.
All right, that's what. The other thing I have is the Anderson Playground is scheduled to open soon. Is there any way to effectively keep the workers from parking there? You know, you're going to have them up on the street, I guess, and that will be sufficient, you think? Right.
Pass it. I'll bring it right back to you.
There's going to be times where there's vehicles that go by the playground to enter the trail, the bridle trail, and get underneath the bridge by the Schenley Park abutment. But there should really be no construction vehicle staging or parking right next to that playground. It should be all on, pretty much on the road that you see up there in green that's shut down before the overpass. You know, and there'll be a little bit over on the Parkview side too, but not interfering with the Parkview intersection. But we don't anticipate anything by that playground.
My next questions have to do with what's going on under the bridge. Number one, will the Junction Hollow Trail have intermittent closures?
I think we covered that in the slides at about like 15 minutes when there's things moving overhead.
Is there going to be a designated truck route in and out of the site underneath the bridge? And will that involve 4 Mile Run?
So designated truck route, I don't know if you want to take that or Zach but.
I'm not sure what I don't know.
Are you saying for like materials?
Like Sailing Street, basically.
Yeah. There'll be stuff. Yeah, there'll be materials and equipment that are brought in through the park entrance, I guess, down there, off Saline, and I think it's Boundary, to be brought underneath the bridge. We're going to be basically cutting an access road from the side of the trail up towards the Parkview side. So that end of that hillside will be a staging area for us. On the other side of the bridge, on the Schenley Park side, we'll be cutting a much smaller access road down from the trail down towards the railroad tracks, again, to access some of those concrete substructure repairs. For a period of time, when we're building those access, it'll be a little bit heavy. We'll have traffic control, we'll have flagging to protect the people using the trails underneath. And if we need to do, intermittent closures, it'll, very, very short closures.
Can you repeat the thing about an access from Parkview Avenue?
Basically, from the Junction Hollow trail that's under the bridge right at the center, from down at that level, we'll be cutting up towards Parkview. Can you point it out, Zach? Yeah, we're up to where you're just kind of clearing those trees, still under the bridge on the hillside underneath the bridge, but just to get up to the pier.
From the trail to Parkview. They're working in the direction of Parkview, right, but they're not cutting trails up to Parkview.
Right.
And these are all great questions. I just want to be mindful of other people's questions. So does anybody else have a question? We'll go to Zoo and then back to the room, and then we'll come back to you.
Fraser Fieldhouse folks want to know, Eric, can you tell us what the current anticipated schedule for the Fraser Steps construction might be?
I sure can. The project is moving along in design right now, and we have it scheduled to go out to bid, I think around Labor Day. I am hopeful that construction will start in the fall, but it will definitely continue into next year. I think we're getting to the point that we'll probably have better updates that we can share with the community relatively soon here. I know we haven't been out in a while for that one, but it is moving along.
Is there a question back here?
So will the span of the bridge, including the sidewalks, be the same width as it is now? I mean, are you going to extend the sidewalks further out? And my other question is, was there ever any consideration to making one of the sidewalks for the bikes, the other for pedestrians, and keeping the two westbound lanes? Because in the mornings, in the rush hour, it gets very, very heavy coming into the city.
Aaron, do you know off the top of your head the existing clear width of the sidewalks? Is it like 5 foot? So I think to the edge, to the lip of the concrete, it's I think 6 feet, but then you've got the steel railings and the steel fencing on the current sidewalks today. The new structure will have, is it 6'8"? Aaron, putting you on the spot. He's got all of his calcs with him, a good engineer.
The overall size, the overall width is going to stay the same.
The overall deck width is wider from the existing.
The 6'8" is jumping out at me, but I might be confusing bridge projects at the moment.
No, I mean, could you make one a bike lane and the other one a pedestrian lane? So, and eliminate the, and then get two westbound lanes?
Yeah, the question about, pushing the facilities to one side or the other, I think for one, because of where the bridge is in proximity to the park and to proximity to dense neighborhoods, the amount of student traffic, we felt that there was, and also there is some structural concerns to kind of pushing the overhangs out. So to kind of prudently provide that capacity, as we've said a few times, we've kind of maximize what we can, the width that we can get out of the structure. And so that's why we're looking to reuse existing space, mindful both of how the neighborhoods are evolving, how the park is changing, how people are getting to and from campus, and trying to provide space to do that safely in the future in a way that doesn't necessarily require an automobile.
So, yeah.
The total doesn't work. But look, the sidewalk's only, what, 5 foot? You need 11 foot. So even if you took one away, the total doesn't work for that.
I can add just a bit. So, as Zach was saying, that we pushed the sidewalks out a little bit. We mentioned earlier we squeezed an extra 2 feet out of the curb to curb width. Like we literally like squeezed every bit out of this, and I think we even pushed for a little more. This is what's that?
That's the old transverse section.
Okay.
So that's not exactly.
It's close.
It's close, but all the numbers aren't going to add up because it's actually a little bit wider than what that is showing.
But we are widening a small amount. We're trying to squeeze a couple more feet out of it. I think even with this, like to do a two-way cycle track, 6 feet would not be enough to accommodate bikes on one of the sidewalks, and I don't think it was possible to make the sidewalk big enough to accommodate a two-way cycle track. And honestly, I think there's justification to have pedestrian sidewalks on both sides. We know that crossing Boulevard of the Allies is challenging. So, I feel if we would have taken one of the sidewalks and turned it into a bike facility, we really would have impacted the bike folks, or I'm sorry, the pedestrians a good bit. What were you going to say, Aaron?
If you want to turn one of those into a shared use path, the standard is 10 feet.
Yeah, not a shared use. I'm saying one side bike lane, the other side pedestrian.
Right. Even at that, it would be tough. Like as I say, like you wouldn't be able to push this out far enough. Like we just didn't have the capacity and the trust to do that. So we did think about that, and we've heard currently with mixing bikes and pedestrians, it's not always a great situation because of course a lot of yeah.
I mean, the one lane westbound is, it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a big problem.
It's going to be a huge problem, in the mornings especially.
Another question back here.
Thank you. When was the traffic study done that you based the decision you only need one westbound lane? And what was the time period, not just what year it was done, but how many months was it done for? And also, how did you compare it with the Fern Hollow Bridge, which has fewer vehicles crossing it per day than this bridge did before it was closed, and yet that bridge you decided had to be 2 lanes in each direction?
So I was more involved in Fern Hollow, so I'll take it. I believe the traffic study for this was done in 2019. We would have to get back to you with more detail. I don't have the exact.
And during the school year.
It was during the school year to make sure that we captured, full volumes and not during the summer when traffic can be a little lighter. We did see a very big. I was surprised when I saw it. The outbound peak PM is much higher volume than the inbound peak AM, like the number of cars. So that, we did see the numbers that justified that we could do this. Any change like this is it's unknown, but we do have the data which shows that it should work out. Fern Hollow, the city has thought about whether 4 lanes are needed out there. That is a conversation that we've had. Due to the accelerated nature of that project, it just was not feasible to look at changing lanes as part of that project. We did have, we brought it up within the first week when that was getting started, and it was determined between us and PennDOT that we really had to put the 4 lanes back. That we didn't have the time and the data to look at making changes out there.
Question on Zoom?
Someone at Fraser Fieldhouse wants to know what steps are being taken to ease traffic in Oakland. Like, can we have a traffic cop at Phipps during really heavy periods? That seems like a reasonable step, they say.
Steps being taken to ease traffic in Oakland, i.e. a traffic cop at Phipps. Is that being considered?
I don't know, but we can certainly talk with the zone's special deployment division about what traffic enforcement looks like. Yeah, that would be through our office though, not through DOMI. Any more questions in the room?
Yeah, so since it was mentioned we're looking at the cloverleaf at the same time, makes sense. I just am wondering whether the sort of large structure, you know, the general pattern of the way the cars are going to flow is going to be the same before and after or not. And if it is going to be the same before and after, I guess I just wanted to say I have some concerns, safety concerns around the playground and the pool that, you know, I don't know if they're going to be public meetings, but I just wanted to know like what the thought process was around all of this and what the public process might be if there is a follow-on public process there.
So the that bridge project, it's kind of what we call a superstructure replacement. The superstructure is the beams and the deck basically. So what the aerial elements that you're driving over. So it will look, in the grand scheme of things, pretty similar to how it does today. It's concrete beams today, it's going to be steel. The railings will look a little different. The cycle track will be there, but the interchange itself will still function as it does today. There had been some talk about removing the entire interchange, but there wasn't really, that wasn't really a possibility as at the speed that this project was moving. So your concerns about safety, you know, traffic concerns related to the playground and pool.
I mean, you know, just if you're, you know, crossing from the west on the sidewalk trying to get to the playground, like you've got people whipping around you fast.
Yeah, it's not our favorite thing. So I'll pass these concerns along to our traffic group. You know, we do have the cycle track at the moment. I'm on the wrong slide. The cycle track does show, it projects to the end of the kind of the interchange, as we're calling it. You know, DOMI traffic is looking at where this can tie in elsewhere in Schenley Park. And I'll pass along concerns about safety just in the other kind of park amenities.
Yeah, park amenities, and also, you know, connect the dots with the cycle track too.
For sure.
If you're coming down Panther Hollow and you're trying to get into the cycle track on the left side, it's a weird situation.
Right, I agree.
Any more on Zoom, Laura?
So many on Zoom.
Okay.
During construction, why are they only working 4-day weeks?
So the contractor is still working 40-hour weeks. They're doing 10-hour days. Generally, there's kind of an efficiency gained by packing in as many work hours to a single day. And there's also some advantages as far as you know, procuring materials, deliveries, that kind of thing. So I'll pass it on to Eric to expand on that.
Yeah, there will be, I failed to mention this, there will be certain operations like bridge painting that will happen more days of the week and more hours in a week. But yeah, typically it's a 40-hour week. We choose to do it, you know, 10-hour days. You know, that's just kind of the way we do it other than the winter time. But there will be some operations that are working more than 4 days a week. So, and more than 40 hours a week, so.
We'll go here and then we'll come back to Zoom.
Is there any chance that a light can be installed at the intersection of Swinburne and Greenfield Avenue? Speaking as somebody who goes that way down to 2nd Avenue, I have sat on Swinburne for a long time. That's a big deal.
So there will be a traffic signal installed at the intersection of the Swinburne Bridge and Greenfield. It will happen in conjunction with the Swinburne Bridge project, so that is still several years out. And I should say that there's an enormous amount of effort to fit a traffic signal in at that intersection that requires us to realign the intersection and to kind of grade back the hillside. And so really there's no other opportunity to do it than during the bridge reconstruction project.
Okay, but aren't there temporary signals that you can install that are running off of solar or something?
The questions about installing a temporary signals. The temporary signals are kind of a Hail Mary. I don't know what to call it. They are so finicky and unreliable that you might be waiting longer at a temporary signal than you would be at the stop sign. You know, when temporary signals are used on other construction projects because of the length of a lane shift or something like that, there's extreme concerns for safety and there's extreme frustration on the part of commuters. And so, unfortunately, it's the reality that it can only be done during the bridge reconstruction project.
On Zoom.
Jessica on Zoom wants to know if folks who live near construction should be concerned with their homes being so close to cranes and such.
No, I think we have an extremely professional contractor and an extremely diligent team of inspectors and the construction oversight from the state, and everyone's going to make sure that this is a safe project on every day of the project.
Sorry.
I only have 2 more questions or points to make. Number 1, is the smaller bridge that you've added to the project, is that a contributing element to the historic status of Schenley Park? Because if it is, we need to pay more attention to the design. Do you know that? If it is, is there anything else more bridge? I'm wondering if this is a contributing element to Park's historic status.
Zach, the superstructure the original superstructure has already been replaced.
Right.
And so the superstructure is not a contributing element.
Right, so the bridge was essentially built in 1986, I think. And we are, some of the details, some of the railing, we're doing some work with the concrete to kind of emulate the original design. So to hopefully kind of match the original structure that was built in the 30s. You have one last one?
Yeah, one last notification. We have a point of contact on the project regarding the closures of the Junction Hollow Trail. If we have a truck in the neighborhood that somebody doesn't want them in there, parking, is there going to be somebody on site that the public can call in to get in contact with as opposed to somebody downtown?
Yeah, we should. Unless you have an answer immediately, but that is something that we should have, and we can make sure we get that published.
Pat, I'll be the on-site inspector for the city, and as soon as we get a field office established, we can get a phone number out with the press releases when things get closed. So if there's something blocking the driveway, you can either get a hold of the site east or you can call our construction inspection field office. We'll send one of our inspectors out to look at the problem and get it corrected.
That's all we need.
We're back to Zoom.
Yeah. Fraser Fieldhouse, someone there wants to know, is there going to be any point at which the overpass and the bridle path will be closed at the same time?
We need to differentiate between the vehicle overpass that we're working on and then like the pedestrian tunnel, which we're not working on. Just a possible clarification for the question. Are they talking about the vehicular bridge that we're replacing the superstructure on, or are they talking about the pedestrian tunnel which connects over from the playground to the pool?
This person's concerned with pedestrian access to the pool.
Okay. Would you anticipate impacts to this pedestrian tunnel? So we are not anticipating a need to close the pedestrian tunnel between the playground and the pool.
You didn't say it today, but I seem to remember at sometime in the past, they said they were going to work on that pedestrian tunnel at the same time. And now it's not part of it. That doesn't make sense because you're closing everything else. Like, do it at the same time.
The condition of the tunnel, I think maybe could use some paint here and there, but and there is some work on the curbs up top that won't impact pedestrian access, but we're doing what we can to maximize the impact of this project, to maximize our gains during the impacts of this project. So we have. That tunnel will be in good condition when the bridge reopens.
Speaking of maximizing impact, someone at Fraser Fieldhouse would like to know, is it possible for the city to also repair the Juneau Street steps while reconstructing the bridge?
They say that the crew will be clearing the hillside up to the steps from the trail.
You will not be up that high.
That's not part of the project, but I think it's within the work limits around the abutment. Yeah.
The wooden steps go down to Juneau Street, but Juneau Street dead ends. There are 3 very dilapidated houses that deserve to be demolished. Yeah, Juneau is the access to the.
Could be. Yeah, could that be repaired?
It's not part of the project.
It's not currently part of the project.
The follow-up is like, could it be added? Is it too late?
I think that it would not be part of the project paid for by the federal dollars.
All right, it seems like questions in the room are kind of tapering down. I assume there's a couple more questions on Zoom.
Yeah. Was there any discussion of rotating the direction of the third/center lane depending upon the time of day, like with the Liberty Bridge?
That was not considered. I think that there's as many safety concerns that come along with that as there are seeming benefits for throughput. So again, the traffic analysis that we have, I think the city, the design team, the state, I think everyone agrees that what we have is going to be a valuable outcome, and will be, will maximize the use of the bridge.
So in light of the single lane going eastbound, I think the single lane is eastbound? Westbound. Are you going to have a merge point then before the bridge where traffic is going to have to merge to a single lane and then open back up to 2 lanes?
So the presence of the interchange just east of Charles Anderson Bridge gives us a kind of natural spot where lanes branch off either towards Schenley Drive or, so it'll continue back through there.
I know what you're talking about where it's branching off, but then you also have the traffic coming across Panther Hollow, which is going to be headed to Charter Irons, and so you got 2 lanes there, would have to merge into one to hit the bridge. Even though you bifurcate the traffic beforehand, 1 lane Oakland, 1 lane, like I said, 1 lane towards Phipps and 1 lane towards town. But the other thing I guess is, mention is cycle track lane. Again, in the other bridges design, there is that lane on Forbes Avenue for cycles. I do not see a whole lot of enforcement because pedestrians walk on there along with the bikes, mixed use. I also see bicycles still on Forbes Avenue, even though they have a dedicated lane. So for the pedestrians, they don't really use that light at the bridge on the west end of it to cross to the sidewalk next to the cemetery. They just walk straight with the bikes. So what was designed for bikes to have one pathway, pedestrians another, it's a mixed use. So if that mixed use is going on, there, even though that wasn't intended, I know there's some safety concerns and stuff along that line for that, mixing the pedestrians and the cyclists together. I don't want to go on more calls than I have to. But if that's the case, as people were saying before, can you do something that way and then to get to your second westbound lane?
Interesting that you mentioned Forbes Avenue. I was just having a conversation earlier with someone. I think he had to leave, but he lives out that way. And he said 2 things. One, people do walk up the cycle track, as you say. He also said that the mid-block crossing is getting a lot of use, so maybe it's a mix of people going both ways. I think the situation is different on this bridge. We have a cycle track, but we also have dedicated sidewalks on both sides of the bridge, so I wouldn't anticipate a reason for people to be walking in the cycle track because they have a very good facility, immediately right next to it. So,
because we've seen on the bridge from Phipps to the Panther Hollow Bridge that cyclists are on the sidewalk and they're not using so what's to stop?
So certainly when you have 4 travel lanes, some cyclists might want to ride in the lane, some might not feel confident they ride on the sidewalk. Yeah, I really hope that the facility we're making here will make people confident to ride in the dedicated facility and not on the sidewalk. We don't want to see sidewalk riding in this location. If they're on that other bridge, there is a dedicated cycle track, I really think they should be there. If fast cyclists still choose to ride in a travel lane, they are legally allowed to do that. It wouldn't be my choice necessarily. If they think that they're fast enough, they just want to get in the lane and go, they are allowed to do that. If there's a facility provided, they really shouldn't be riding on the sidewalk in general, generally speaking at least. Kids might be a different exception on something like that.
Sounds good, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
I've come close to being hit plenty times on the Schenley Park Bridge and on the Panther Hollow Bridge by cyclists on the sidewalk.
And one of our goals in providing a dedicated facility for them is to give them a space to not ride on the sidewalks, so that they don't. Okay.
Elena on Zoom would like to know who did the traffic study. Is that something that DOMI does internally or that they ask a consultant to do?
The traffic study was done in conjunction with the larger bridge rehab design project. So that was done by our lead consultant, Michael Baker, and that it informed the design process, it informed the planning process. Yeah, it was all built in.
I think you're on pretty solid ground, traffic-wise. I think we got to put the project in and see how people adapt to it. Providing the facility will get them off the sidewalk. We found that in other parts of the city. So I think just move forward, but just pay attention. Let's keep our eyes and ears out there and give Norm a call if you see anybody misbehaving out there. But I think you might be okay on the traffic study.
Laura, how many more questions on Zoom?
Only a few.
Okay.
Yeah, you're doing great. Linda on Zoom has more of a comment that she wants me to share, which is Dawson Street from Fraser Street to the Boulevard is one way. She says it's time to really consider Dawson Street be one way on the other side as well. Dawson Street in and Ward Street out. It would be a lot better than trying to maneuver through parked cars, pit buses, and other large vehicles. Not a question, just a comment.
And I think this is, again, more for the traffic team than the structures team. Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of circle back to one thing we've talked about a little bit. When we're doing these bridge projects, I mean, it's often, the need for the bridge project is typically first driven by the structural condition before we have, whether or not there's other things going on either side of the bridge today, tomorrow, 20 years from now. And so when we are planning for these bridge projects, we're trying to plan for every contingency and to build in as much value as we can to the structure, knowing that the structure, as was mentioned before, we need to get 50 years out of this. We want to get 100 years out of it, but for the federal dollars to be used, we need to get 50 years out of it. So with that in mind, these projects, the timeline is cumbersome. The amount of reviews that happen locally and regionally and at the state and at the federal government and with outside parties entirely, and the coordination involved, there's an army that goes into all of these projects. So we're looking to deliver the best thing we can for when the bridge opens, as well as Pittsburgh 20 years, 50 years from now. And the structure won't be moving, but that's not to say that there's not room to revisit the bridge, the roads, how space is used in the years ahead. So, we're not going away. We'll continue to see how things function and make sure that it's safe for everybody and that it works for everybody. So, we really appreciate the patience with everyone in this room and everyone online and people who didn't make it for the fact that that sucks. This bridge has been closed for 15 months now. But I think we're really excited to get started, which we will see that mobilization ramp up in the next month or two. And we're really excited for what will be the finished product. So, yeah, thank you, though. Yeah.
This is about the second or third time, if I'm not mistaken, you said 50-year lifespan. Why is that the mark you're using? Gordie Howe Bridge, 125-year lifespan they're looking for. We know that, again, probably numbers, when this bridge was rehabbed in 1988 or whatever the case is, it cost how many? You add another couple zeros to that today, and in 50 years from now, our offspring that we're going to have to foot the bill for something else that's going to be add another couple zeros to that. So what's the difference to engineer this for 75 or 100 versus 50?
So that's an interesting question. I think, Partially, it's based on, well, it's based on the life of concrete to some extent. So the steel truss that's out there, again, that's not going anywhere. We can keep strengthening it. We can keep modernizing. You know, every 50 years, we can modernize that thing. Maybe someday they'll say, why were you building with steel? That was so short-sighted. But at the moment, you know, there's nothing that's preventing that structure from standing 100 years from now. But the realities of Pennsylvania winters, while they're not the most severe, it carries with it a lot of salt, and we do have extremely heavy vehicles on our bridges, and that wears out the concrete. And so that's sort of projecting, we need to get 50 years out of that concrete deck. As when the deck needs a replacement, we'll evaluate then, you know, what else needs to be repaired.
Just to add on to that a bit, you know, we're not saying that the bridge will get torn down in 50 years, but we would expect there to be a significant project needed out in that time frame. There will be minor maintenance work needed before that. That's routine. You got to keep up the little stuff to make sure you get that life out of it. You know, even if you built a brand new bridge with all new components, a lot of times we're shooting for 100-year life now, but that also doesn't mean that you walk away from it and you don't come back for 100 years. You probably will still be replacing the deck halfway through that, but your main components are lasting. And this bridge is what, 90 some years into its life, so we'll get a lot of good life out of it. But it can continue to be, you know, its life can continue to be extended. You keep it painted, you keep the water off the substructure, it can last for a long time. That's what we're shooting for.
All right. Laura, any last questions on Zoom? Okay. I put up here the Engage page. It's really easy to find. Also, if you just Google Charles Anderson, Engage PGH, there's still a question box on there. You can email neighbor@pittsburghpa.gov. I have a couple of cards if anybody wants to reach out to me directly. I know there were some questions related to the traffic team, but I just want to thank Eric and Zach and the folks from the project team for answering questions. Thank you all for coming, listening, asking your questions. Hopefully you've left with most of your questions answered, and if not, we'll try and continue to answer them over the next couple weeks and months and throughout the life of the project. So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you again to OPDC for hosting us.